Well, as you can see, turf is being lifted again up here on Finn Cop. It's now June 2012 and Clive, along with a team of postgraduate archaeology students from Cranfield University, are setting to work to investigate another section of the ditch and ramparts here on this ancient hill fort.
Down Mont Soldau by the winding stream, Finn Cop meets the heavens high.
Your work, Tim.
And no sooner was the last turf lifted than the routine of sun, wind and rain to keep the diggers alternately well watered and blow dried set in. This trench across the ditch and ramparts was dug well away from the previous ones so that the archaeologists could test their theories about the construction and destruction of the entire fort. Despite the rain and the inquisitive neighbours, the first batch of students and volunteers made good progress, cleaning up the site of the demolished rampart wall. Well, we're now halfway through the dig. Here on this side, the inside of the ramparts, they're almost down to the natural. And on the far side, where the ditch is, there's a new batch of students, and they're cleaning up the outer side of the rock-cut ditch, keeping their eyes open for any interesting artefacts.
Flint core. Flint core. The joy of Flint.
How are we doing, gents? Becoming more believable.
Yeah,
Something along there.
I'm not convinced, but
Well,
they do line up.
As soon as the de-turf trench was cleaned up, it was measured and photographed. The diggers then set about two distinct tasks. The first was to cut a slot through the wall base to see how it was constructed, and the second was to excavate the rock-cut defensive ditch. As in the two previous digs, this section of it contained blocks of stone that must have been tumbled into it from the rampart wall in what clearly was a heavyweight act of destroying the fort.
It's now day 8 and it's our last day of excavations, and we are starting to come down on human remains. We started yesterday with a disarticulated right clavicle, which is your collarbone here, and it's an adult. And as we took the soil down around it, we started to find a number of disarticulated infant remains. We've got duplicate elements of the infant remains, so now we know we have at least two juveniles. And around the same area where we found the adult remains, we've got an articulated spine, some ribs, hand bone, which is kind of up around the upper end of the chest. And yeah, that's it for now. Keep you updated.
And as more of the bones were unearthed, the important task of recording them continued. Meanwhile, the investigation of how the rampart wall was constructed is drawing to a close.
It looks like there is pavement that's been laid all along here, and then the stones that are sort of higgledy-piggledy have been put on top of it. So we're tidying it back to that level. We're tidying it between the stones and tidying the section edge, and then we'll be ready to draw and take photographs.
Back in the ditch, the painstaking work continues to excavate the skeleton and record what's been found. A couple of days ago, we were given a demonstration of a brand new laser camera imaging system that produced this 3D view of our trench. So maybe drawing and measuring will soon be a thing of the past. Anyway, the area around the skeleton has now been cleaned up, and after being photographed, the bones were carefully removed one by one, so that they could be taken back to the lab for forensic analysis.
That is like perfect. Wow. How amazing is that? That is so good.
Well, it's in good condition. I can't say anything about the age or sex. It's an adult. Quite a short
We might have just had not the latest of all. They were short of plastic.
But quite a strong ridging on the deltoid tuberosity for a clamp. They were
3, 4, 5.
Georgia, if you want
And
to
so,
talk about any point.
under a leaden sky, at the end of day 8, the dig drew to a close. All that remained to be done the following day was simply to fill the trench back in.
First ever dig I've ever done.
So we cleared an awful lot of mud out until we hit bedrock. So I must have found some rocks and some dirt.
So we put in another trench this year, some distance from previous years, about 150 metres around the rampart.
And I think what's been exciting this year is that we've been able to test the interpretation that we've made on the basis of the current evidence, and everything we've had out of the trench this year is consistent really with what we've been thinking.
And we found the remains which appear at first glance to represent 4 different individuals, which is incredible.
In terms of the rampart construction, the remains are incredibly well preserved and they're not being robbed at a later time like they have in the other field.
Well, I think the lasting memory has to be the landscape. The archaeology is excellent, but the landscape is absolutely stunning.
I definitely want to do some more in the future.
6 months on, and Finn-Kop is shrouded in snow, and that sort of matches the chilling results from the analysis of the bones. In total, the remains of at least 6 individuals were recovered from the destruction deposit at the bottom of the defensive ditch. The articulated skeleton that we saw being excavated was a mature adult, but its pelvis and cranium were missing, so it wasn't possible to say whether it was male or female. Similarly, the other adult was only represented by a single right clavicle fragment. There were also the skeletal remains of 2 neonates and 2 preterm fetuses, and the proximity of these remains suggests that the adults would have been female. The bones are subsequently undergoing radiocarbon dating and DNA and isotope analysis, and these results will be added to this video as soon as they're published.